are deep in the heart of high school football season, deep in the heart of Texas. It is week 8 approaching, but there is intrigue both on and off the field in Texas high school football, and who better to help break it all down with us than the Dave Campbell's Texas Football High School Football Insider and Internet Sensation. And we are joined by at Matt_Stepp, Papa817, Matt Stepp. How are you, Stepp?
Hey boys, how's it going? It's nice and cool out. It feels like fall a little bit, and I think the playoffs are right around the corner, which is I'll go out on a limb and say that the 6 weeks of the playoffs are probably my favorite 6 weeks of the year.
You know, it's funny. I was actually having this conversation with my wife yesterday about how it's kind of hard to believe that we are, after this week, we will be halfway done with all of high school football season, like including the state championships and stuff like that. I don't know, maybe we're just getting old, but it seems like it's really flown by this year.
Yeah, I think it's the old adage, time flies when you're having fun, but then also I think we are getting old too. So it's just a deadly combination of both.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I want to ask you, there's a number of things going on both on and off the field in Texas high school football. Down in Austin, the UIL's Legislative Council meeting is going on, or it has concluded. Overall, I don't know if there was one giant headline coming out of this as it pertains to high school football, but overall, what are the takeaways from this Legislative Council meeting?
Yeah, I think the two biggest takeaways from a football standpoint, and keep in mind, the UIL meets about all extracurricular activities. So we are concerned only with football, but obviously they have lots of other things on their agenda, from water polo to one-act play to wrestling to you name it.
Competitive copy editing.
Yeah, copy editing, man. The media mafia got all aboard that. So I think maybe, Max, I think you'd be a strong contender in Region 1 in the copy editor competition. I think you'd really be a contender.
They'd kick me out for being too strict.
They might, but I think you'd be a contender. So obviously they have a lot on their plate. But from a football standpoint, to me, the two biggest takeaways were, number one, the expansion of the home field advantage pilot, which started in Class 6A in 2015, I believe. Will be expanding to 5A starting in 2018. So in 2018, you can look forward to Class 5A programs who finish in the top higher district seed will get the option of a home playoff game in the first round of the playoffs. So that's good for the 5A schools. But if you think about it, there's also impacts on the smaller schools because they like to play at the 5A venues in the first round of the playoffs. So that kind of limits some of their neutral site options in a lot of ways. So no one's really talked about that very much, but the 3A, 4A, and 2A schools may have a little bit tougher time finding first-round playoff sites to play at, and it could maybe mean a few more Thursday night Week 1 playoff games, especially the small school level. So no one really thought about that. I did see some chatter about it on Twitter from one of the 4A ADs. So that's something I didn't even think about until I saw that on Twitter, but it's really a good point. If you think about it, the 4A, 3A, and 2As play a lot of their first-round playoff games at Class 5A and 6A stadiums.
Interesting. Yeah, that's certainly something to keep an eye on as the playoffs do come careening towards us. And speaking of the playoffs, I understand you had a conversation with Texas Football Today's own Dr. Susan Elza, the UIL athletic director, because I know that there's a little bit of confusion as far as this home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs is, and I understand you got some clarification on the matter?
I did. I really appreciate Dr. Elza lowering her standards to talk to the likes of me after a very, very busy day. So really appreciate it because I know she's very busy, and to deal with jokers like myself is I know, a step down for her. So it's much appreciated. But, when you look at last couple of years, the way the wording of the home field advantage was, the top seed in either Division I or Division II had the home field advantage. Well, in certain rare scenarios, you could have potentially had, and I think we had it last year, where a team that finished third place in their district hosted a team that finished second place in the opposite district because of the way the Division I, Division II break happened. It's rare, but it did happen last year, I think. I think it was in 29 and 30 6A, the Laredo Western Rio Grande Valley District, I
That
believe.
sounds right, yeah.
Somebody who finished third actually hosted a team that finished second in their district, which, from the spirit of the rule, is not really what the UIL was trying to get at. Mm-hmm. So they modified the rule this year a little bit to where now the home field advantage is based on where you finish in the district standings versus how you're seated in Division I, Division II.
Interesting.
So in this scenario last year, the team that finished in second place in District A, but was the second Division II seed, would still host that game because they're playing the top Division II seed in the other district, but that team happened to finish third in the district.
So to really
little convoluted, but for us high school football dorks, it makes sense.
So really, what we're talking about here is that it no longer as far as a home field advantage is concerned in the first round of the playoffs, it no longer particularly matters what seed you are. It matters where you finished in your own district.
Correct, because every district they have to. It's called certification. Mm-hmm. Again, high school football dorks know about this, but on that Saturday, the last Saturday of the regular season, each district has to send in their standings to the UIL, and they certify it, and they say, Coppell finished first, Jesuit finished second, Skyline finished third, Lake Highlands finished fourth. Mm-hmm. They send that into the UIL, so that the home field advantage will be based off, if I'm a second-place team and I'm playing a third-place team in the first round, I'm going to host the game.
Right.
The other exception is if now this year, if two teams finish in the same spot in their district certification, so if you have a second-place team playing a second-place team in the first round of the playoffs, that home field advantage is not guaranteed there. In that scenario, those two teams will handle it like a playoff game from round 2 to round 5, where they will negotiate a neutral site or flip home and home, whichever one the two coaches agree to.
Very interesting.
Coin flip.
That's definitely a change from last year, and I know that it was a little bit convoluted last year, but it sounds like things have been clarified a little bit more. But that's particularly interesting about how it may not apply to all of the 6A games.
Someone's bound to be upset, always.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, no one's ever happy, but we could see a couple. There may only be 2 or 3, but we might see 2 or 3 neutral site first round games in 6A because of the way the teams, because you start, some coaches get really some coaches love to flip home and home. Mm-hmm. Brent Davis and San Angelo Central are looking at you, but some coaches get kind of cold feet about that, and they just would rather just go neutral and not have to run the risk of playing a home game at somebody else's stadium. We're
talking with DCTF high school football insider Matt Stepp here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation, #TF Today. Stepp, I want to ask you, you got a piece up on TexasFootball.com. Your initial playoff projections. It's never too early to start looking forward, and so you've got complete projected brackets for all of 6A all the way down to 2A. And I want to ask you, because obviously that requires you projecting every district in the state, and so there are some that we have a pretty good feel for how they're going to shake out. What are the districts that you'll admit here on the air in front of God and everybody that you don't really know what's going on, or that you're unsure of the way it's going to shake out?
Well, there's probably 3 that really right now jump off the page at me. Is really I got no idea. The first one is 11 6A, mm-hmm. and just because even though Mesquite Horn and Rockwall Heath are both 3-0 right now, but I think John Tyler, Longview, and Rockwall High are all very capable of beating the top 2 teams in that district. So even though there's a little bit of a separation at the moment, excuse me, I think that district could really, especially after this week's games, because I think both Horn and Heath could lose this week and really throw that district into a lot of chaos. Horn's got Rockwall. Rockwall's 1 and 2 in district, but they are really, really dangerous offensively. And then, he's got a dangerous John Tyler team this week. Wins by the 2 underdogs could throw that district into all kinds of quote-unquote tiebreaker chaos going forward. And I think with those 5 teams at the top of the standings, they all could beat each other on any given night. and that could make for some really wonky scenarios as we get towards the end of the season. In San Antonio, and I talked about this in my 10 Thoughts column, District 28 5A, that thing is just – I think I had to sit down and project every single game going forward for the rest of the season in that district. And I think it's a 9-team district, number one, which in the 9-team districts you have all kinds of potential scenarios. But I think Highlands is going to run the table and finish at 7-1. But then I have a 5-way tie at 5-2 for the last 3 playoff spots between Brackenridge, Burbank, Memorial, Edison, and Sam Houston. So I think that district is crazy because literally, aside from the bottom 2 teams in the district, I believe it's Lanier and Kennedy. I think after that, the other 7 teams are all really, really evenly matched. You look at the scores of their games, and so I think you could really have a scenario where you have 4 and 5, 5-way ties for playoff spots, which really just get kind of wild and crazy. So that's
flip
another
at the
one. Yep, meet at Whataburger, flip a coin. It's going to be crazy in that district, and I think we're going to continue to see that going forward. So that projection could change 3 or 4 times before the end of the season. And then the last one, and I talked about this one 2 weeks ago, because I can kind of see this one on the horizon, 12-4A Division I with El Campo and Needville, Stafford, Bay City, Columbia, and Sealy. Literally, all 7 teams in that district have a win. Sealy and El Campo and Needville right now are 2-1 and lead the district, and then there's 3 teams at 1-1, and then there's 2 teams at 1-2 right now. So everyone, again, that's one of those districts. 2 weeks ago, everyone was 1-1 in the district. So everyone can beat everyone. The teams are very evenly matched. Every game's going to count, and it could come down to one of those deals where if you get stuck in a tiebreaker, you want to make sure you're in a tiebreaker with somebody that you beat head-to-head because you don't want to get left out of the playoffs. But, those are the 3 districts that I think really stood out to me as just being completely bonkers and as you like to say, Greg, crazy town banana pants because, and I will be working the phones here in the next week or 2, clarifying those. This is the time of year where we all bemoan the UIL for not putting a uniform tiebreaker in each district because every district has their own rules on breaking 3- and 4-way ties, and so when you get in those tiebreaker scenarios, you got to start calling around and figuring out and doing positive, negative points and what the max is. Is it a max 14 or is it a max 21 or is it a max 17? I think we had one weird district last year where they ended up on a point max of 18. Just real random numbers. You got to figure that out, and you get tired head real quick figuring it out.
It is high school football wonkery at its highest level, and of course there's nothing that high school football nerds love more than realignment talk. And
yes.
And realignment winter is coming, so to speak. The new realignment is coming in February, but you don't have to wait to get your realignment fix because next Friday, Matt, is a special day. Why is next Friday special, and why should people be paying attention, especially at TexasFootball.com?
So next Friday is the day known around the media circles as Snapshot Day. And what that day is basically UIL, the last Friday in October before realignment, they take all the schools and they get a attendance number for each school on that day. And for those who don't know, it is not the number of students attended that day at the school. So if 50 kids decide to show up and not show up for school because they're sick, doesn't count. It's how many students are enrolled at the school on that day. That number is what the UIL will use in the February realignment to determine the classification for each school. So numbers will be pouring in from all across the state to all of us at DCTF, and we will begin to compile all that and hopefully try to put out a somewhat accurate realignment projection and at least be able to maybe have – I do think after a few days we'll be able to have a pretty good idea of where those classification cut lines and division cut lines will be set. And the big news for realignment, this coming realignment in February, is again in Class 5A, they will be splitting the division from Division I to Division II ahead of time instead of this year like they're doing where they don't split it until the playoffs. So the big question for a lot of people is, where is that Division I, Division II break going to be in Class 5A? My early guess is it will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,750 to 1,800. And I think after Snapshot Day, I think we'll be able to narrow that number down just a little bit. There's a lot of variables in realignment, as many people know. One of the biggest variables for me is which ISDs will choose to opt up their schools into a higher division or classification. As one of the big news we saw last week is Carl Padilla from the Padilla poll tweeted, Frisco ISD is going to opt all of their schools up to Class 5A Division I. They I think are going to have at least 2, maybe 3 schools that would have fallen in Division II, but they're going to opt those schools up to Division I for one 10-team district, which makes sense because we all know about Frisco's financial issues that they're having right now. So this will obviously save them money on travel. But that could have impacts to other schools because that could cause that cut number to be raised just a little bit. And maybe a school that had a larger enrollment that would have been Division I normally now gets to be Division II because 3 extra schools are in the Division I bucket now.
Yeah.
It's a great thing that Matt Stepp is here to do the work for you so that you can just go to TexasFootball.com and read his fine work, because it is complicated. It takes a lot of phone calls and text messages, but he will have all the coverage as our Dave Campbell's Texas Football High School Football Insider, Matt Stepp. See his fine work at TexasFootball.com and follow him on Twitter at Matt_Stepp817. Stepp, appreciate your time, my friend.
Thanks, boys. It's a labor of love, but somebody's got to do it, right?